Paper Mario, to put it simply, is a very strange series. Never before have I seen a handful of video games elicit such strong emotions and passionate arguments among so many people. The first two games were near universally lauded as among Nintendo's very best. They were rich, engaging RPGs with memorable characters, unique worlds, and surprisingly thoughtful storytelling, especially by Mario standards. But then came Super Paper Mario, and that's when the series' direction began to change drastically. Its gameplay reduced the RPG elements in favor of a much heavier emphasis on platforming. But fans generally gave it a pass because it retained the well-written characters and story that made its predecessors so beloved. The same can't be said about Sticker Star, which was lambasted by fans right out of the gate. There was barely any story to speak of, the world design was as boring and uninspired as it gets, the cast of characters consisted almost entirely of identical nameless toads, progression was frequently blocked by confusing, poorly designed puzzles, and the battle system managed to be both frustratingly tedious and a complete waste of the player's time. But despite the very apparent backlash, Color Splash was largely cut from the same cloth as its predecessor. Now, to be fair, it was a step up in many ways. The writing was sharper and the environment you explored were more interesting. But the story was still bare bones, the characters were still mostly forgettable, and the battle system was arguably even worse thanks to forced gamepad integration. The higher-ups at Nintendo have tried to give all sorts of rationales for why Paper Mario has strayed so far from its roots, but I'm not gonna get into that right now. Especially since there's really nothing I could say that a certain fuzzy blue YouTuber hasn't already said better. Now, right off the bat, I'll tell you that the latest entry, Paper Mario the Origami King, is not the true 1000-year door successor so many have been hoping for. But that by no means makes it a bad game. In fact, it does restore a lot of the spirit of the original two titles while also doing its own thing. One of the biggest aspects of Origami King that brings it close to the classic Paper Mario is the return of a single interconnected overworld. Both Sticker Star and Color Splash had fragmented map-based structures, but there's no level select screen to be seen in Origami King. It's one cohesive world that naturally expands as the story progresses. And despite its vast size, there are various methods of fast travel to keep you from getting lost or needing to cover long distances on foot. It makes this adventure feel far grander and more like, well, an adventure than ever before. And the storytelling further adds to that sense of grandness. Now, the plot, at its core, is still a lot simpler than the first three entries. Whether it's helping out a group of singing trees, unearthing an ancient temple full of faceless toads, solving a mystery on an abandoned cruise ship, discovering islands while sailing across a vast ocean, or embarking on a quest to reach a magical spot in the sky, the game always kept me guessing about what would happen next. But it's the characters that really help elevate the story. Origami King harkens back to 1000-Year Door by finally bringing back partner characters. Sort of. In the first two games, Mario was accompanied by a group of companions who not only had fun and memorable personalities, but also helped out in battle. Origami King's approach to partners is quite a bit different. Instead of having characters permanently join your party, each partner only sticks around for a certain portion of the story. This structure is definitely a little disappointing, but it does allow each of these characters to have their own focused arcs. Both Bobby and Professor Toad are extremely well written and endearing, and I grew to genuinely care about them during my time spent with them. It was also just a treat to see Mario team up with Kamek and Bowser Jr., who had a surprisingly adorable dynamic. Now, the one character who is with you for the whole journey is Olivia, who's pretty much impossible not to fall in love with. She gives off the demeanor of an innocent child who's seeing the world for the first time, and you really get the sense that she's grown by the adventure's end. The writing in general is just stellar across the board. Whether it's the main cast or some random NPCs, the dialogue is consistently hilarious and made me laugh out loud several times. But it's not all snappy jokes and paper puns. There are a handful of moments of genuine emotion. This is what I'm talking about when I say that Origami King captures the spirit of the earlier titles. I cared about what was happening. I felt invested in these characters. From start to finish, it felt like an epic adventure full of exciting and memorable moments. The gameplay, however, still differs quite a bit from the originals. But, as I said before, that doesn't make it bad. Exploring the overworld is simply a joy, and the 5 dungeons you travel to have some terrific puzzle solving. Each area is rich with secrets and hidden collectibles that just satisfy just about any completionist. The collectibles that affect the gameplay the most are the toads, who have been folded into origami and very cleverly hidden to blend in with the environment. Rescuing these toads populates the hub area, giving you access to helpful services like item shops and hints for hidden heart pieces, but they can also help you out in battle at the cost of coins. While there are still disposable items to use, you'll always have access to your base attacks of jumping and using your hammer. You can collect stronger versions of these weapons that do wear out over time, but they last a good handful of battles before breaking. But the main focus of battles in Origami King is the ring system. Mario stands in the middle of an arena surrounded by enemies, which you'll need to line up in order to deal the most damage. It added a unique puzzle-solving element to battling that I really enjoyed. At first. About 2/3 into the game, the novelty kind of began to wear off for me. Enemies' attack patterns are all extremely similar, and there's very little in the way of variety when it comes to which kinds of attacks you have access to. What's annoying is that the game had the chance to fix this issue with the partner characters. In the older games, you had full control of the partners during battles, and they each had their own arsenals of attacks. Even though Origami King's partners deliver when it comes to enriching the story, they have next to no effect on the gameplay. Each one has a single automatic attack they perform after Mario. You have no control over which enemies they target, and the attack will fail half the time anyway. The good news is that the Toads in the audience can help speed things along, for a price. They can help light up enemies, deal some damage, and even restore your health. The more coins you give them, the more potent the effects of their help will be. And this is far from the only thing in the game to spend coins on. You can also use them to increase the time limit you have for solving the ring puzzle. This is especially useful in boss battles. You can purchase items and weapons, as well as accessories that grant you certain stat boosts. Now, accessories are another example of Origami King inching towards an aspect of Thousand Year Door, in this case its badge system, without going the full distance. While the badges required you to put some strategy into deciding which ones to equip for each battle, the accessories usually act as flat upgrades that you'll keep equipped at all times until you unlock stronger versions of the same ones. But still, all of these uses for coins ensured that I was never at a point where they lost value, since I was consistently spending them and finding myself in need of more. This fixes the biggest issue of Sticker Stars battles, being that they were completely pointless. You battled enemies to earn coins to buy stickers to battle more enemies. There was no XP system and therefore no sense of reward or progression. Avoiding enemies altogether was objectively the best decision because it meant saving your stickers for the boss battles. Now, Origami King also lacks a system of leveling up, but that's remedied by the fact that coins have far more value. Defeating enemies is the easiest way to earn a lot of them, and you'll want to prepare yourself for the bosses by stocking up on weapons, but also still having enough coins to buy yourself time for the ring puzzles and pay the Toads to help you when you're in a bind. Now, the most valuable commodity earned from battles, besides coins, is confetti, which is used to fill in holes in the overworld. Filling them in is sometimes required to progress, and doing so is another easy way of raking in large numbers of coins. So, battling, at least when it comes to standard enemies, is still Origami King's weakest link. I definitely would have preferred the traditional turn-based system of the originals, but I'll still take something I tolerate over something that actively makes me want to pull my hair out. Boss battles, on the other hand, are a lot more exciting. Instead of lining up enemies, you use the rings to create a path to the boss Mario must follow in order to land a successful attack. They offer a far greater degree of variety and creativity, with many of them pretty much being an elaborate puzzle you need to solve. Each boss also affects the arena in some way that forces you to plan your route even more carefully, which is why you'll want a healthy supply of coins to avoid running out of time. While I really enjoyed most of the bosses, certain ones were too confusing for their own good. The hints the game gives you are way too vague, and some of the requirements to successfully damage the boss are just far too specific. Looking at you, Ice Elemental. Paper Mario the Origami King is far from perfect, and there's no doubt that I still want Nintendo to one day truly listen to their fans and release an entry for the series that's a full-fledged return to form. There are legitimate reasons to criticize this game beyond it simply not being more like Thousand Year Door, but the high points are so high that they make those flaws more tolerable. Origami King is, above all else, a solid Mario adventure from start to finish filled with humor, charm, and heart. And it doesn't hurt that it's all wrapped in an absolutely stellar presentation. The visuals are breathtakingly beautiful, and the soundtrack is one of the best out of any game released this year. Going into Origami King, I was expecting to simply like the game, but I ended up loving it. It's not the traditional Paper Mario we've all been hoping for, but I was having way too much fun to really care. Rest in power, Bobby.